Welcome back to my 1991 Acura NSX, a car I've owned for almost 8 years now. A few months ago, I did a video explaining why I was considering selling my NSX, and then shortly after that, I realized the absolute stupidity of that thought given what this car means to me. And then I went down the modding rabbit hole. I invested in short JDM gears, a Type R final drive, an LSD upgrade, and did a bunch of maintenance along the way. Differential transmission bearings, engine mounts, a bunch of things. And after those changes, I was so happy with the car. My passion for the NSX really felt reinvigorated after I did those key mods that I had been wanting to do ever since I bought the car, but just couldn't justify the cost. Shout out again to Christian at ATR Racing for sourcing all of the parts. Well, a few months have gone by and I've only driven the car a few times, not because I don't want to, but because the car wasn't starting. A couple of buddies of mine scheduled an NSX drive, and I was stoked to bring my newly short-geared NSX out for a cruise, and that morning, the car didn't start. I figured it was the battery, so I borrowed a jump starter. I put my car back on the tender overnight. Nothing seemed to work until I went on the forums and found that NSX starter failures are very common. That's not surprising given the age of this car. It's almost 35 years old. And I found that one of the common hacks to start an NSX or any old car really with a failing starter is to try hammering on the starter with either a rubber mallet or a breaker bar or something of the sort. So I did that and somehow the car started. After that, I figured, okay, it must be the starter that's the issue. This car, I figured, had the original starter. So down the rabbit hole I went looking for a new starter. The problem is the OEM Denso starter isn't sold anymore. And to find one, you pretty much have to get a remanufactured or refurbished one. And on eBay and some other sites, they're going for over $800. I was very lucky that another local NSX owner, he's up in Sacramento, saw my Instagram post on my failed starter and mentioned that he had a used Bosch starter from when he purchased his identical 91 silver NSX. I paid him for the starter, a fraction of what a remanufactured Denso starter would cost. I took my car to San Carlos Auto Solutions, a local, not NSX specialist, but they do work on a lot of local NSXs, so they're definitely considered an expert on these cars. Shout out to Kenneth and to Andrew for taking care of the car. They did a bunch of stuff, including the starter, and that's when they realized it wasn't actually the starter that was the issue. It was a tiny piece of rubber that costs about $8 that acts as a stopper pad for the clutch pedal when I push the clutch all the way in, and that thing had basically come apart. It wasn't properly activating the clutch switch, so the car didn't know the clutch was pushed in. That's why the car wasn't starting. Obviously, I got that replaced. I also have the Bosch starter. The car starts up just fine now, and that's that. Now, that being said, I have done a couple of upgrades to the car recently as well. I decided to splurge. I got one of my dream sets of wheels for this car, a set of Volk TE37SLs, and the finish that I always thought would look perfect on a Sebring Silver NSX, and that's magnesium blue. And I wrapped the wheels in some brand new Continental ExtremeContact Force tires, a 200 treadwear endurance tire, and actually the only reason I went with these tires is because the fronts come in a very specific size that is perfect for the NSX, which is 225/40/17. If you go 225/45 or 235/40, you will almost guaranteed have massive amounts of rub on the OEM fender liners. You'd have to go wide fenders in order to make that work. The rears are 275/35. So now I have a proper set of wheels, proper sticky wide rubber, and Mita Motorsports, that's MITA Motorsports over in Japan, were kind enough to send me their shift knob as well as their short shifter. As you can see, this shifter does not work with the OEM NA1 NSX shift boot, which uses a clip type connection to the OEM shift knob. The Science of Speed Type S replica knob I had before was compatible with this, but obviously this Mita Motorsports one is not. So I do have a Type R mesh shift boot on the way that I'll be installing once it arrives. But for now, let's talk about how this feels. And let's talk about how the NSX overall feels with all the changes I've made to it recently. It's just such a joy to drive. Out of all the cars I drive nowadays for the channel, whenever I come back to my NSX or another well-modified NSX, I realize just how special this car is, even for the arguably absurd amount of money people are asking nowadays. Many are over $100,000, and the minimum that you'll see for a clean NA1 is around $70,000. I mean, even at that price point, for a car with just 270 horsepower, this car's driving dynamics are just so special. And as I'm demonstrating right now, you don't have to be absolutely ripping it 10 tenths or even 9 tenths to truly enjoy driving this car. It is such a lively and engaging car to drive, even at low speed. And at mid speed, 7 tenths, 8 tenths, the car just feels borderline perfect. So much steering feel, great visibility all around, but especially out the front. Excellent throttle response. I have the June lightweight flywheel, and the car just feels so connected to the road. And I must say, with all of the gearing and transmission upgrades that I've made, this transmission to me is now a 9.5 or maybe 10 out of 10. With the JDM short gears, the 4.235 Type R final drive, which is about 5% shorter than the OEM final drive, a June lightweight flywheel to improve throttle response, and of course this Mita short shifter and knob, which by the way basically feels OEM plus. The shift effort is slightly higher now, but that's really just because the gear lever or the shift lever is shorter than stock. But these changes have really just made this transmission one of the highlights of this car. Even in stock form, it was one of the highlights, but with the long USDM gearing, where the second gear goes to 81 miles per hour, that was always the frustration. You didn't really get to enjoy going through the gears all that much. The only reason I might only give it a 9.5 out of 10 though, is because I think the gearing could be shortened a little bit more even, maybe another 5%. And then if this had a 6th gear that would maintain that cruising highway RPM, it would be a 10 out of 10. But for canyon driving, this is damn near perfect. This is a very harsh and unforgiving road. Lots of bumps, lots of slow, blind corners. But these Sakebomb Öhlins road and track coilovers in the Grand Touring spec are just perfect for this type of driving. They soak up the bumps, but they give me a lot of firmness, which I want. In the corners, there's so much less body roll than before. And these ExtremeContact force tires and 225 width up front, they do give me more grip than before as well. I used to run a very narrow Falcon RT 615K Plus, only a 215/40, but those actually ran a lot narrower than most other 215 width 200 treadwear tires. Again, this car, I'm driving maybe 6 tenths right now, but it's so alive. I feel so much of what the car is doing through the steering wheel, the chassis, even through this pretty crappy OEM seat, which I think I'll be upgrading as one of the next major upgrades for this car. A lot of folks who have reviewed the NSX, especially retrospectively, have said that these seats are some of the best ever. I simply don't agree with that. I think these seats are pretty awful. They're comfortable enough for short drives, but I've realized over the years that for longer drives, these are so terrible on my lower back. driving two 911 right now. Hence the silence. All you can hear is that VTEC scream, baby. Forgot to mention the Sakebomb AP Racing front big brake kit with the Sakebomb custom rear rotors have made braking confidence in this car triple, if not quadruple, compared to OEM with just some pads and fluid. Absolute game changer. Couldn't be happier. And the perfect transmission upgrades. As you can see, I'm so happy with the way this car is set up now. So what's next? What's next for modding this car? Well, I think it might be time to do some TLC on the interior. Like I said, I hate these OEM seats. Might be time to finally put some bucket seats in this thing. But the thing is, I don't want overly aggressive bolsters for a car that I drive on the street. So I'm actually very open to suggestions on a nice bucket seat that'll sit a lot lower than stock, hold me in better than stock, but still allow me to have some level of comfort. But they also need to fit inside the pretty tight NSX cockpit, so that's another consideration. Also, this car doesn't have ABS right now because the OEM ABS was having issues, so I disconnected the fuse. Maybe an NA2 NSX ABS upgrade is in my future as well. Is pretty much all second gear. The original NSX, my original NSX, with the right mods, is one of the top driving experiences you can have. Dare I say, not even just under $100,000, but at any price. If your goal is not big straight line performance or massive amounts of grip, this car can still deliver so much of what a lot of true driving enthusiasts enjoy, which is feedback, balance, that feeling that you are one with the car. I can't think of another car off the top of my head that offers everything that this does. So with that, guys, a big shout out to Ken and Andrew at San Carlos Auto Solutions and to Mita Motorsports. More to come with the NSX, but that's gonna wrap it up for today. See you all in the next one.